Hello, welcome back to another part of the series here where we're looking at the real deep truths, and we're going all the way back. We've been right back to the beginning of Genesis. So if you haven't looked at the previous episodes, please do. I think this will make a lot more sense. It's really fascinating. We looked at the sort of the hidden divine hand that's in everything, with number sequences, how days work, how time works, the real fundamental things. So let's see where this adventure goes next.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a reminder of what we did previously, I think, or That's what I was hoping for anyway. So we remember these shapes.
Yes.
That was the dodecahedron of Barbello and the feminine principle that we spoke about in the first video, I think. And these are the elements of nature, or the forces of nature. And these have become a little bit more apparent as we go along in the presentation anyway. What's interesting for me is I put this Ephesians verse up here. It's Ephesians 6:12. I think it's interesting because it says that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and against the authorities, against the powers of the world's darkness, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So what we've got over on this side of the screen is those forces, okay, the forces of nature. And in particular, if we go back up here and look at this word rulers, and then we actually come down onto this page down here, we actually find the rulers here. And this is under 430 Elohim. So this is going back to the very beginning of the Bible. This is God, as we can see here, in the Judeo-Christian Bible. So this is the God in the very first chapter of the Bible. So in the beginning, God created. Yeah, so we know that this number allocation, the Hebrew word for this, is the Elohim.
This is one of the key things before, wasn't it? You have to look at, just to recap the touch, the actual meaning of the word in the Bible might be different to what we expect in common speech. And what appears sometimes, that there's a few different versions of God in the Bible, and we're talking specifically about 430 as in the beginning of Genesis. Yeah. So this is the great spirit. This is the big one that we're talking about. Is that right?
Well, this is the God that we're talking about in terms of the Judeo-Christian Bible. Okay, so we're not talking about the universal God that we were
one
talking
step
about
down.
in the very first. Yeah, we're talking a step down. So this can be found in the Strong's Concordance. So the Strong's Concordance is basically a breakdown of all of the words that are used in the Bible, and actually lists their original Hebrew and Greek meanings, or how they were meant to be used. And it basically gives a running commentary of how these words were originally meant to be interpreted. So we can, it's interesting, like you said, because there's different gods that feature in the Bible, and this is one of those gods. And this is actually a group of gods, and this group of gods actually are the same group of gods that were found in the Sumerian histories. So we're talking about the Anunnaki from those times. So going back a very, very long time, a good few thousand years, allegedly, if you believe time has moved the way that it has. So this represents a group of gods that are led by a particular supreme deity. So when we're talking in this aspect of God, it's not necessarily in the sense of a singular thing, which is how we can determine this by looking down here at the different variations of it, divine being, gods, goddesses, gods and rulers. And that, again, this is the interesting one for me, because we've got this link here with the rulers here and the rulers up here. Okay.
So is the implication we're fighting against the gods then? Is that the...
Well, it's certainly, I mean, the verse there is very specific, isn't it? It says our struggle is not against flesh and blood. That's very, very specific. It's against the rulers. So it's telling us these rulers are the powers of the worlds of darkness. They are the spiritual forces of evil, basically. So when we look over onto this side and these elements of nature, you know, we've got the octahedron, which is representative of air. We've got the icosahedron, which is representative of water. The cube, which is representative of earth, and we spent quite a bit of time on the cube in our last presentation. And again, these are the reminders up here, you know, of what we've got here is the hexagon shape, but actually within the hexagon is the cube structure. Yeah, and that's what this is representative of, this force here. And I think when we were speaking in the last presentation as well, we were looking at the concept of two cubes, which was 10 points, if we remember, which actually made up the 10 points of the tree of life.
Yes,
which was part of the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, because this is what it's all based around. And we looked at the fact that the two cubes also unfolded into two aspects, and they did a transformation, because the cube actually unfolds into the crucifix. So within that structure, you have the two religions of Christianity and Islam, which is interesting.
And the little Jewish cubes as well, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. So then obviously you've got the fire aspect over here. So these elements, when you actually think about it logically, is what makes up us, you know, as spiritual and physical beings. All of these things are present. So you've got this mind aspect, or this conscious aspect, this thinking aspect up here, and the rest of it down here is part of those natural elements that make up this man, which is us, you know, and obviously women.
Cool.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Also, pleased to see that you've used more than one concordance, sorry. Because people did ask,
Yeah,
I got a couple of comments, why do you always use Strong's concordance? But you're using 3 different ones here.
Yeah, well, there's a number of concordances, and I think Strong's is the leading one. And again, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just offering one perspective. I can't offer everyone's perspective and please everybody at the same time. You know, if everybody's got a different view, then that's great. Chip in, do a presentation, and let's all work together. You know, because that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, I think people are wondering why you preferred Strong's rather than the others, rather than a criticism, I think.
Yeah, but for me, it's not about it's not about finding it's not about a preference. It's about me finding, you know, the word origin. You know, so when we're coming into Strong's Concordance, you know, we've got to go into this exhaustive one to find, you know, the plural, which is, you know, the LOR aspect of the Elohim, which we'll go to now. Actually, I'll click on the next slide. So this LOR, Hebrew 433, comes from the previous slide. And what we can see straight away, it's a plural, it's coming from this L here, or prolonged from L. And we spoke a bit about L, didn't we, in the previous presentation?
Yes.
About his links, or the links to Kronos and various other deities, Saturn, you know, back in the ancient times. Again, showing that principle of this cube working in the 2 different aspects of Christianity and Islam. So interestingly, you've got one god or godhead that is actually representing 2 major conflicting religions as well. That's the interesting fact. I mean, the fact that they are so different in the way that they look at things. And like you said as well, we've got that cube aspect for the Jewish part as well. So it's kind of linking in all 3 aspects to the 3 religions in this cube part. So yeah, with regards to this LOR aspect, this is going down to the personalized level now. So we're finding out where this group of deities is extending from. Now, remembering, I'm just suggesting that that group of deities, that Elohim, are representative of the forces of nature. Okay, other people are going to have different views of that. It's just it's just a suggestion from my aspect. I'm not saying that we're dealing with, you know, solid things, because when we look at gods, they're presented to us, aren't they, in these images of well, we look like them, and they look like they're human because they're doing the same kinds of things that we do. they're never really portrayed as forces of nature, are they? Well, my view of that is it?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yes. So,
So
remember
anyways,
when we did the Genesis thing. I mean, you're pointing out there seems to be two creations, isn't there? You've got the God in the likeness of this one, and the God made from dirt. There's the other
yeah, the
likeness.
dust.
The dust, yes.
Yeah, that's right. So following down this trail, this exploration. So El comes from Eloah. So this is Hebrew 4:10, and I've put this image of Saturn up because obviously over here you've got the hexagon,
Oh, yes.
which is the storm pattern on, I think it's the North Pole of Saturn or the South. I'm not sure which one it is, but you can quite clearly see in there that that's the cube pattern inside that hexagon. So that links in with Saturn being L, and I mean, I can't explain that as a cube on a planet. Why a storm vortex would look like that shape.
Yeah, bonkers, bonkers.
If anybody's got any ideas, they can tell me why this is representing a cube on Saturn. I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but anyway, this is L.
Circles. Suddenly you got the hexagon stuck on there. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, this represents El and gods in plural, gods. Okay, so this would represent Anu. So if we're going to go back to the Sumerian times and represent, this Elohim as the Anunnaki, if we're going to go back right to the very beginning of civilization, this was the supreme deity, El, the supreme leader of that group, of that pantheon. And this deity as well, I think I've shown his links to the Superman element as well in the movies, and that'll become a little bit more apparent as well with his son, which we'll look at shortly. But if we just look at this verse down here, the possessor, the God, the Most High God, the possessor. Now he was the priest of God Most High. So this was according to that period of time. So, there's a lot of history that suggests that there was a golden age when Saturn was in rule. I mean, I haven't gone that far back. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's people out there that will, and that Saturn or Kronos was basically disposed of by Zeus, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, funny enough, this comes up in some of the videos I've done recently, based on Alan Wilson's work, which comes very close to what a lot of you're doing, which is going back to Tiamat and the idea of a strange planet coming into our solar system and effectively being chased out by Saturn or Jupiter, and then you've got planets coming in and out being described as angels. So it's very close to this, and that's I butchered that summary, but it's people can look out for the video because it's very closely related to what you were just referring to. The idea, I think, with Velikovsky as well, isn't it, that we haven't always had a stable universe with the planets just going around like clockwork. Yeah. In the past, they've been all over the place, which is where some of the Saturn stuff comes in, I think.
Yeah, and that's I was just about to say about Velikovsky and the electric universe, because they've got a lot of things to say about the solar system and it not being stable, and it's all very interesting. Once upon a time, if Saturn was the sun, it's interesting that something's put its lights out. That's that's in one way or another. So, and interestingly, when you go back into the myth as well, Saturn, Kronos, was the youngest son who put the lights out of Uranus. So it's a recurring theme where father is disposed of or taken over by the son. And that is something that's prevalent as well in the Superman trilogies as well. It's about the power passing down through the generations, and that's what we see with our royalty as well. It goes to the oldest son, doesn't it? Whereas I think in British history, to the Britons, it was to the oldest child. So
or it can be a nephew or something. The king would choose, really. He wasn't forced.
Well, it's probably the most worthy
suitable.
of
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I think the Saxons did something similar as well. They'd have a moot and a vote, and they decide a successor. It's quite a Norman idea. I think this prima college, was it? Oh, I've forgotten the term now. But prima conager, I think it is, whatever, the firstborn anyway.
yeah. Well, Ethelfled was a good example of that, wasn't she? Because she
Sorry?
was Ethelfled.
Okay.
I don't think she was a queen, was she? But she was a very influential a lady, or a very
Yeah, yeah.
influential princess from the Saxon era. So yeah,
Well,
so
same in British
even if,
history, yeah, you got loads of powerful females.
yeah, that's right. Okay, let's crack
Wasn't
on.
obliged to do
We're
now. No, I totally
diverging.
agree. Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah.
So anyway, we've got L here. So let's go on to the next slide. So what we've got here now is going back to that tree of life aspect. So we have in the previous slide, we were talking about El, who is summarized as God. So that was the God that was described in chapter 1 of Genesis. And what we're talking about now is a different God. So we're talking about now Yahweh, the proper name of the God of Israel. Okay, so this is totally different from El. So we're talking different deities, just like in law, there's different meanings for different words. We're again learning that there's different aspects for the gods. Now, this part of Yahweh's name, I'm not saying, I've highlighted here the first, or the upper aspect of the cube on the tree of life here. I'm not saying that that does correspond to Yahweh. Okay, I'm just literally pointing out here that there is a cube shape in there, and there's going to be another cube shape in here, which is this 2 cube aspect working, which consists of this entire tree of life aspect. And the deity that is relevant to this tree of life is Yahweh. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. We're not on Elohim now. We're on Yahweh. We've moved to
Yeah, we're on to Yahweh.
different
So
definition or different God.
yeah, and as you can see down here, this comes from Hava. So if we were to go into that for another definition of where this word origin comes from, we arrive at this higher. And we discussed this previously, didn't we, in the previous slide, which means to fall out, come to pass, to become and be. And this embodies that aspect of the fall. So there's the second cube highlighted as well. Okay. Now, interestingly, when we look at what higher is prescribed to, these are the words that are used in the beginning of chapter 1 to describe this deity that's at work. So it's basically saying that higher was the earth, and the earth was higher, was without form. Okay, so we're talking about matter there. Earth becomes a definition of matter. It doesn't become a definition of earth as we would know it, because it's formless and it's void. Yes, we're talking at a basic structural level. But what we've got here is the 2 aspects of Yahweh. We've got this upper aspect and we've got this lower aspect with these 2 cubes functioning within it. And obviously we know that within this Jewish mysticism, one of these cubes unfolds into a cross. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Brilliant. So let's go on to the next one.
6 panels just fold out. Yep.
So I'm just going to go very briefly through this first chapter of Genesis. Okay. I'm doing this because it's highlighting where man comes in the pecking order of things. Okay. So again, over here, I've got these representation of these forces of nature. Now, bearing in mind, what I've described is that these 4 here, these are going to be representative of the Elohim. Okay, these 4 aspects here, and to some aspect, this element here.
Yeah, because you could combine them all, couldn't you, to make one dodecahedron?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've got here as well is this idyllic picture of what the Garden of Eden originally looked like, or the original garden looked like, which was where all of the animals and the original man were all living in complete harmony. There was none of what we've got going on now, where they're all trying to eat one another and hunt each other down, and they all appeared to be getting on very nicely. And this is kind of hinted
the
at
rich color, yes.
yeah, in these aspects. So we know from the fourth day, okay, that it was the sun, the moon, and the stars. All of that was created. Then on the fifth day, it was the fish and the birds. And interestingly, when you look at these verses, God is saying, let the waters bring forth. Okay? Is let the waters bring forth all of these things, and the waters brought forth abundantly. And they did it on the same thing as well. Let the earth bring forth. So this is on the sixth day.
So why do you think that's significant?
It's significant because it's for me personally, I'm thinking it's at a level that's higher. So we're going at a higher order of creation here. This isn't a representation of the physical world. We're not going into the physical world yet. I believe that the whole of the first part of Genesis is to do with a light world, or the world of light, and the original man that was created on the sixth day was more of a spiritual aspect than a physical aspect, because if we carry on to the next verse, the next part, the crucial bit, we learn that God said, let's make man in our image and our likeness. So if God, if we remember, is the Elohim, which is the natural forces of, or the forces of nature, so that's the image and likeness that they are created in. Okay. Whether or not they are created from matter, I think is a different. I think it's a completely different question to answer and ponder, because if that's so, then God is made of matter. Okay, so if we're going to be using all of the aspects of the forces of nature, so we're going to be using earth, air, fire, and water, if all of those aspects are coming into play, then to some extent we've got to accept that God is also matter as well. Does that follow?
It does, yeah. I'm just wondering, when you mentioned it dealing with light, I mean, is that similar to the sort of energy and electric stuff you'd see in electric universe, you think? Is this energy being made into matter, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's something to definitely explore. But it's quite clearly, it says that, you know, this man is made in the image, in his image, in his own image. Yes.
So the description applies to God as well as it applies to man. It is the implied message.
Yeah, and what we've got to look at as well, from a natural force point of view as well, does a his represent the masculine aspect of force? So if we're talking about the masculine aspect of force, is that fire and air? Well, then, yeah, that would be a reasonable thing to say, because water and earth, apart, you know, according to the Platonic solids, are the feminine aspects of the Platonic solids. So if God is creating man in his own image, he's creating it purely in a masculine aspect, isn't he? He's not using his entire androgynous aspect, his feminine side as well, because we know that that is also what the Elohim represent. You know, they are androgynous beings, angels. You know, they've got a male and female side. And this is what we see, look, God created he, him, male and female, created he, them. Okay, so we're getting a feminine male. This is what this is, I believe, a female, a feminized male. Sorry, my phone was going in. Okay, and this man was given dominion over everything, basically.
Yeah.
You know, there was no rules. You know, there was nothing that that they had to do other than replenish it. You know, and basically replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over it. And they were given all of the herb-bearing seeds. They were given all the seeds of the fruit trees, and they were told, look, for you it shall be for meat. Okay, so they were going to be vegetarians. Okay,
Not
so
for
they
long, by
weren't
the way.
eating meat.
In case anyone
Sorry?
watching this is panicking, it's not for long, is it? Because the meat comes in only a couple of verses later, I think. But yeah, at
What's
this
this?
point,
Sorry, the meat
the
side of things.
vegetarianism. That's what I was talking about there.
Well, yeah, this is telling that man, this God, the Elohim have created. So this is not Yahweh that's creating this man. This is the Elohim. Okay, this is
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
Hebrew 4:30, which we've just gone through, and they are basically being told that all of the herbs, the veg, and all of the fruit trees and everything is their food. So if you go into Strong's Concordance and look up the meaning of the word meat, it actually means food.
Yeah, the old Scottish use, isn't it?
Yeah, vital force and stuff. So
Because it also
and then
implies, so the next slide also implies that the animals are vegetarian as well, doesn't it?
well, this is the next verse, yeah, because that's what it says. It says, unto all of the beasts of the earth. So that's everything. That's all of the lions and all of them and all of the birds and everything that creeps across the floor. They've been given every green herb for meat. So there, it says there in in chapter 1 that the man and all of the animals were vegetarians. They were all living happily ever after me under the sun, in this paradise.
Until God wanted his burnt offerings and start slaughtering them in large numbers.
Well, this is which God though? This is the God that we're talking about, because
Quite
once,
right. Yes.
Once this Elohim had made everything, so we're talking about El and the Elohim, and they looked at everything and they found that it was good, and everything was created on the morning, even in the morning of the 6th day. So all of this went on in 6 days of creation. Now, obviously, I'm not saying they are the normal 6 days that we experience, just to put that out as a disclaimer before anybody says. I'm talking about just a general godlike day, which could be who knows.
Could be anything.
It could be anything. So here we are.
So thank you for watching, and a big thank you to Luke for sharing all his years and years of research. This is part of a little trilogy which gets to the next stage. So please look out for those. As you can see, every Sunday is a live show at 8 o'clock. A chance to discuss these things, share comments, and there's loads going on in the Britain's Hidden History group and the channel, interviewing all sorts of writers, people with interesting ideas, exploring, as you can see, bottoms of caves, looking at curious ancient stones and just ancient megalithic walls being taken down, ancient languages. Like Welsh goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, and you can read the hieroglyphs. There's a Facebook group where we have live discussion about some of the points raised, and if you would like to support us, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or a member of this channel. You just click on the join button and you'll see some options, and you'll get some funky little bonuses and really help, because you don't get any funding for this, what is after all our British history. So there you go. Thanks for watching again. Till the next time, Heddwch.